I want to take you back to the year of 1992. The Redskins win the Super Bowl, Bill Clinton is president. And Guns N' Roses, they're topping the charts.
Yeah!
But there I am, sitting at my little wooden teacher's desk one cold November day, wondering how I'm going to get through my first year of teaching at North Springfield Elementary. My neck is sore and my shoulders hurt. Getting my 28 kids to focus and do what I tell them to do isn't going so well. So later that week, I walked across the hall to see how my mentor teacher, Tish Beecham, does it. I see Tish sitting calmly at the front of her room in her director's chair, asking her kids questions about the lost colony. What do you think happened to the settlers? What evidence might there be to support that? Instead of lecturing, her kids give it back and forth from this questioning technique. So the next day, I go back to my class thinking, I wonder if that could help me. So instead of standing up in front of the room lecturing like I usually do with my state-of-the-art overhead projector, I start to ask my students questions and they respond and they're all focused, not talking over each other. Well, just then my principal walked through the door and it was one of those unannounced teacher evaluations. And he was there for 20 minutes. When he walked out, he turned to me and he said, Ann, that was one of the best observations I've done for a first-year teacher. Well, as a teacher, I didn't really have that much money. And part of it was because I had discovered Nordstrom. So when this mom called me to tutor her daughter, I was all over it. So here's how the first session went when I went to Alex's house to help her. Alex, I see that you have a Rocks and Minerals packet due on Friday. Yeah, I do. Okay, great. So here's what we're going to do. Now, the first thing we're going to do today in our session is do the first 2 pages. But tomorrow, you do the next 2 pages, and then the day after, you do the last 2 pages, so you'll have this buffer of Thursday before you have to turn it on Friday. How does that sound to you? Okay, Mrs. Dolin, sure, I'll do it. I go back to Alex's house the next week. She's done hardly anything. So then I wonder, well, maybe this questioning approach that's going so well for me in the classroom could work for Alex. So here's how it goes the next week. Alex, I see that you have a book report due on Friday. Yeah, I do. Okay, great. What would be the first steps in getting started? Well, I still have to read the book. I have a chapter left. Okay, well, tell me more. Well, then I have to fill out this graphic organizer worksheet, and I have to write about the beginning, middle, and end. Okay, great. Well, when do you think you might be able to do that? I think I can do it after soccer practice on Wednesday. That would be a good time. Oh, that's great, Alex. I'm so glad you thought about it. So it turns out that with Alex and all the other kids I tutored after her, by asking them lots of questions, I could help them to solve a lot of their own problems. I noticed later on, after I started my business and I had my own employees, that this worked for adults too. In fact, just last week we had this issue and the information, the data we were tracking wasn't quite giving us the information we needed. So instead of going into this meeting with all the answers that I honestly thought were right on, I asked a lot of questions. And it turns out at the end of the meeting, the solutions everyone else came up with were far better than mine. In my business, we offer a service called educational coaching. It's a specialized form of tutoring. We help kids with the 3 soft skills they need to use to be successful in school. They're organization, time management, planning daily tasks, and then planning ahead for what's due in 2 weeks. And then also studying, how to study, learn, and retain the information to do well on tests. Well, we do this by asking kids a lot of questions. We help them devise solutions and then put systems to them. And we follow up with accountability to make sure they're on track going forward. One of the ways we do this is through powerful questions. And as parents, you can use them in your house too. You know, when our kids come home from school, one of the first things we often ask them is, do you have homework today? And the answer is usually yes or no. But a better question is, what are your priorities today? Now, in a perfect world, your daughter would say, Dad, great question. Actually, I have chemistry tomorrow, I have that history test on Friday, and I really need to start that essay. That's not gonna happen. But what this question will do is help your child to think what they might need to do first, and then perhaps second or third. This is really helpful for the kids that procrastinate and the overly anxious kids that tend to think that everything is important. Here are some more powerful questions. Instead of asking, did you study for your science test? You could try, what's something small you can do to get started? Or, you better start that history project. Can turn into, what's something small you might do to get going? So by taking something big, making it more attainable in smaller chunks, kids are more likely to follow through. I have a whole list of powerful questions on my website, but one of my favorite ones we use with students is scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you feeling about that English exam? Turns out that in the workplace, there are lots of ways that managers can use powerful questions and other questioning techniques for employees. And studies have shown that this type of management far exceeds that of telling people what to do. In fact, there are lots of podcasts and webinars and books dedicated to this coaching idea. And this is one of my favorite. It's called The Coaching Habit. It provides a framework for 7 essential questions to ask coworkers and employees. And in fact, the author, Michael Lundy Stainer, brought this book to dozens of publishing houses throughout the country. He was rejected left and right. He ended up self-publishing the book, and to this day, it's been one of the most successful self-published books in business ever. But the thing is, sometimes for kids, questions aren't always appropriate. Just the other day, I flew into the Orlando airport, and I get on the tram, and there's this little girl behind me. She was probably about 10 years old. Well, she puts her leg through the armrest, and she's hanging upside down from the handle. I turn around, and I'm thinking, this is no time for questions. Get off of there and now. Dealing with negative emotions is also a time that we may not want to ask our kids questions. And by the way, this is one of my favorite books on the topic. If anybody ever has a child at home that can be a little bit negative from time to time. Here's an example of a situation that could happen in almost any home. Your son comes home from school. Mom, that test was so unfair. We didn't go over any of that material in class. Everybody got a C, not just me. Now, it's our natural reaction to say, listen, Jimmy, I'm sure not everybody got a C. You need to study harder and buck up. You're in 7th grade now. But a better approach would actually be to make eye contact and listen and empathize and really listen and then name the feeling. So that could become, oh, I see, I get it. I can tell you're frustrated. This technique works for 2 reasons. 1, kids feel heard, even if you don't agree with them at all. They feel like you're listening to them. And 2, when kids feel heard, they're more likely to come to you later when the stakes are higher and there really is a problem, instead of putting their earbuds in or slamming the door or going to their room. So at the end of the day, keeping the lines of communication open is one of the best things we can do as parents. And we can do it by asking more and telling less. And when we do that, we're helping kids come up with problem-solving abilities. We're helping them to become independent so that they can manage well, not just in college, but later on in the workplace too. Thank you.